Okay, we'll get started. Welcome everyone tonight. It is Monday, January 12th, 2012. This is our regular council meeting. Council started at approximately 4:30 this afternoon. Actually, we started at 1 this afternoon with orientation and at 4:30 in camera. Now it's about 5 after 7 starting tonight. Need a declaration to move to the regular meeting. You got that?
No, we do some other stuff first.
Do that other stuff first.
We do the minutes and that first.
No, we don't.
Item 6. We've done.
Okay, so we've done 2. Okay, number 3, faith, blessing, or moment of silent reflection. Anyone coming? No. Ask everyone to take their own moment and have their own silent reflection, please. Great, thank you. Additional items for the agenda? Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have 2 additional items. One is a report on County Council, and the other is police services remuneration.
Any others? Ms. Coulter?
Thank you, Worship. I just have an additional item. It's the minutes of Rec and Parks Advisory Committee from Thursday, January 8th.
Thank you. Mr. Becking?
I'll just give a brief update, Your Worship, on snow clearing operations over the course of the last
Great,
week or
thank
so.
you. Is that everyone? Good, thank you. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Anyone? Councillor McManaman?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be declaring a pecuniary interest on the confirmation of the minutes from the orientation session of December 11th.
Great. And the nature thereof?
As it involves my employer.
Good. Okay. Anyone else? Good. Thank you. Confirmation of minutes.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor O'Leary, that the minutes of the council orientation session held on December 11 as printed be adopted.
Great. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. 6B, minutes from the meeting of December 12th.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor O'Leary, that the minutes of the council orientation session held on December 12, 2014 as printed be adopted.
All in favor? Good. Carried. And 6C.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor O'Leary, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held on December 15, 2014 as printed be adopted.
All in favor? Good. Carried. So we're at number 7.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor O'Leary, that City Council now go into Committee of the Whole to consider public meetings, deputations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports, matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business.
And all in favor? Good. Carried. So we're down to number 8, public meeting. So I need a motion to adjourn the council meeting. I think it's good. Has Marion got it?
I have it, but it's just, okay. Sorry.
Go ahead.
It's just a verbal one. It's not a written.
Okay. Councillor Lemon then moved it? Yes. Okay. All in favor? Good. Carried. I now declare the public meeting open. Council is holding a public meeting under Section 12 of the Development Charges Act of 1997. The purpose of the meeting is to give the public an opportunity to ask questions, provide comments, and make representations on the 2015 Development Charge Background Study. This study calculates new development charges for various municipal services such as water, wastewater, roads, and others. This is an opportunity for Council to listen to you, the public, and not necessarily, or preferably not, for us to give our opinions on things. We will hear what you have to say tonight. We've received letters. If there's any further correspondence, we will review further correspondence that comes in, and it will be reviewed by Council or by a committee of Council moving forward after we hear from you tonight. So, to you, go ahead.
Through you, Your Worship, Notice for this public meeting was circulated to the prescribed bodies, posted on the city's website, and posted in the Sun-Times on December 19th. The comments that were received prior to the agenda being published are included in the agenda package. Since the agenda was published, comments were received from Smart Centers. These comments were circulated to council and the media and will be added to the agenda for the public's review. Those in attendance for the public meeting, please sign the sign-in sheet, which is just located just outside of council chambers. And the personal information collected at this public meeting is collected under the authority of the Development Charges Act. The information collected will be used to complete the development charges study process and will form part of the public record. Questions about this collection should be addressed to myself.
Thank you. Director of Operations, I guess, Mr. Becking.
Thank you, Your Worship. As everyone is aware, the city currently has a development charges bylaw. The Act requires that the bylaw be reviewed and updated every 5 years, and the current bylaw will expire on the 15th of March of this year. As the clerk has indicated, the intent to proceed with an update of the development charges bylaw was published on the website and through various avenues to the affected area. In addition, council should be aware that there was a commitment on the part of staff taken at an earlier time that the area-specific study would be conducted for the Sydenham Heights area, and that commitment is being honored in the draft bylaw, and insofar as it is bringing forward a recommended charge for that development area. The city retained the services of Watson and Associates economists, who are well versed in matters relating to development charge bylaws. As a result of the election in the fall of last year, the process has been somewhat delayed, but nonetheless, we are on track and adhering to the requirements of the Act. There was an open house event that was staged earlier in the process to give the public an opportunity to receive the comments from the consultant. It was not intended to be a public meeting in the context of the Act, but nonetheless it was intended to share information, and that meeting was held. The Act does require that a public meeting, a formal public meeting, be held, and that is today's event. The objective of this meeting tonight is to receive feedback from the community with respect to the proposed bylaw and any concerns that there may be associated with that. Based on the feedback and the decisions that council will make tonight, it may either be, the matter may be referred back to committee for further consideration, or in the absence thereof, council will, the matter will come back to council on the 9th of February, at which time council may choose to make the final decision. But the bylaw itself must be passed by council no later than the 9th of March. So that sets the time frame. One other comment that I would make, Your Worship, is that there may be comments that will come after tonight's meeting, and council may wish to establish a deadline for the receipt of those comments, but prior to any committee meeting, so that the committee has the value of that feedback and can include that in their consideration of any additional thoughts that they may have on the bylaw.
Thank you.
With that, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce Mr. Gary Scanlon of Watson and Associates. Mr. Scanlon has been doing this kind of work for many, many years and is well versed in the matters related to the Development Charges Act. Mr. Scanlon will give a presentation to council of his findings and will be available to answer any questions that council may have.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Scanlon. I'll get you to push the button on the microphone so the little red light comes on so we can hear you. Good, thank you.
Got that?
Yeah.
Pleasure to be before you this evening. I will be speaking to a presentation which is similar to that which you've already received and which was for the most part made available to the public in December. We reviewed quickly the development charge process. It was talked about. We've been speaking with council and the ad hoc committee since middle of October. So we've gone through a dialogue with members of council and with some respect some of the public since that time. We formally had that open house and had an opportunity to answer a lot of questions and engage people's perspectives through that process, and as was noted, subsequent to that we've received further information. Tonight's meeting, as was noted, there's no decisions that's being made. Council's just going to open the session, receive information, comments, etc. Ask any questions of me if you have a direct question. But ultimately, the decision is left to another meeting when you'll have all input to consider. Development charges, just for the members of the audience that may not be familiar, they're a charge which municipalities are allowed to impose under the Development Charges Act. The Development Charges Act actually has been around since 1989, the formal act, but actually these charges have been in place since the mid-1950s. So they're approximately 60 years old. So they've evolved over time through case law, etc., which culminated in the act, and a lot of the interpretations come out of going through the OMB process that gives us guidance on the information. The development charges are for recovering capital costs or for putting in the hard services, the roads, treatment facilities, pumping stations, parks, recreation facilities, etc. So infrastructure or capital, as we refer to it, is what we include in the development charge. It's not to pay day-to-day operating expenses like heat and hydro and staff costs, etc. These costs are in addition to what a developer may put within, if they're building a subdivision, and within that they're putting in internal roads and sidewalks, etc. These are charges which are generally outside of the subdivision area. They're the broader costs, the larger trunks, the treatment facilities, etc. There are some limitations. The 1989 Act was actually revised in 1997. They introduced a number of limitations, exemptions, reductions, deductions, and development charges from a municipal perspective are not full cost recovery. They probably recover somewhere in the range of 75, maybe 80% of the capital costs associated with growth. You can see here there's a number of services which are not allowed to collect for. I'd note parkland acquisition is the acquisition of land. Later you'll see within the calculated charge there's a provision for parkland development that's different. It's once we have the land, then we can develop it into a functional park. So the act, just because the Planning Act allows you to receive contributions of land for parkland purposes, I think the province said, okay, that should satisfy your land, acquiring of the land for park purposes, but you can still put in a charge for developing the park. As we go through, you can see there's a number of other limitations that have, exemptions that have been made. Very quickly, the Development Charges Act, as I say, there's a full act and there's regulations within which help refine or define a lot of the elements of the act. I'm just going to go through a very high simplified steps. We really start with an amount, type, and location of growth. We identify servicing needs to accommodate the growth. Servicing needs are basically translated into capital costs or project costs. We make a number of deductions from those costs, grant subsidies, maybe other contributions, consider whether there's a direct benefit to the existing development by those individual projects. There's a mandatory 10% deduction when we get to the end of the calculations. The acts, and this is only for the soft services. It doesn't apply to water, wastewater, storm, roads, police, and fire. But everything else, we get to the end of the calculations. There's a mandatory 10% deductions. We have to consider historic service standards, and what we include in the charge can be no higher than the average level of service provided over the last 10 years. So there's Appendix A to this, Appendix B to this document goes through that process. And then lastly, if we have money sitting in the reserve funds, we have to rationalize that moving from one bylaw to the next. We end up with a net cost after all of those deductions, and we must allocate it between residential and non-residential benefit. And then basically, item 6, we divide it back by the growth to come up with the charge. Residential charges are normally imposed on a low, medium, and high density. So low being single, semi-detached, medium density, townhouses, high density, apartments. Non-residential is normally imposed on a cost per square foot basis. There are mandatory exemptions. There's not many of them, but there are situations where the Act says you as a council may not collect money. There's not a lot of them, but the first one is industrial buildings. If you have an existing building, that building can expand by up to 50% and no charge is payable. So even though they may draw a lot of water or create a lot of sewage and that type of thing, you cannot charge for the first 50% of that expansion. If it's 75%, the increment, the extra 25% above this exemption requirement, you can impose the charge. If you have a single family home, you can add up to 2 additional apartments as long as you don't more than double the size of the home. And if you've got a medium or high density building, you can add 1 additional unit. The last one is really a local government sector exemption, which basically says that the school boards can't impose a charge on the county or lower tier municipalities, and similar, the county can't impose the charge on the other 2, or the local municipality can't impose the charge. So on all of your buildings, you exempt each other from payment of the charge. There's then what we call discretionary exemption, and this is where you as a council consider the policies and make refinements that you deem appropriate for your municipality. Sometimes this is to reduce the charge wholly or partially, either for certain types of developments or certain classes of developments. Across Ontario, what we most often see is exemptions or for churches or for agricultural, like bona fide farms. And then with industrial, sometimes we see either exemptions or reductions for industrial types of buildings. If the charge is going up, you can considerably, you can phase them in over time so that you can step it up over time. These 2 exemptions in your particular case, and I'll talk about it later when I show the current charges, but with your last bylaw, that's exactly what you did. The first thing was you phased in the charge over a number of years. And then with that, you didn't reach 100% of the calculated charge. You put in 80% of the charge, which was calculated through a similar type of study. And then just to complete that as well, the Act allows for indexing, and you never index the charge. So the charge really is back in 2009 dollars, or about 10% lower than what it could have been if you indexed the charge. So I'll come back around that, but I just pointed out while we're on this what the former council had done. Lastly, there's redevelopment credits, and what that is meant to say is if I tear down my house and I'm going to replace it with another house, I should be given a period of time to replace the house without having to pay a charge. Similarly, a non-residential building, industrial building, or commercial building, you can tear it down and be provided a period of time to replace it. Across Ontario, most municipalities use either a 4 or 5 year time horizon for that redevelopment credit. There's a select number of municipalities that actually have lesser amount of time. There's some that may put in a 2-year provision, and then there's select municipalities that have gone longer, up to say 10 years. Example, Centre Wellington, Halton have allowed for their development credits to be a longer period of time. In your particular case, just on discretionary exemptions, I mean, I've talked to how you dealt with the charge, but as well, you've got non-residential buildings for agricultural operations are exempt from the charge. temporary buildings where the owner has agreed that the building will be temporary, they've entered into agreement, and at some point the building will be removed, and then places of worship are also exempted from the charge. So these are generally what we see in many other communities. I touched upon local service policy. There is a definition within the of what this is. It's dealt with in Appendix E, so I'd invite you to take a look in that particular situation. This is where, as I say, the developer is responsible for certain sized pipes or certain types of infrastructure. Then the development charge takes its effect in and above what the developer is responsible for. I've talked to this simple chart to both council and to in the public sessions. Development charges are not mandatory. You as a council don't have to have a development charge. And that's where we start, but you are allowed the opportunity to collect a charge. And what happens is, as growth occurs, there's pressure in order to build infrastructure. The best example is to open up certain areas. You have to extend water mains, sewers, perhaps put in water towers, pumping stations, etc. So as the growth is occurring, there are costs that the municipality must face. That dedicate parkland, you need money to develop the park. Over time, there's pressure on recreation facilities because the population, as it grows, puts more pressure on your ability to program, etc. So over time, we see those changes, and that's what's identified here. So as we move forward with the growth, we see the need for infrastructure rising. You as a council have really not a lot of choices in how you deal with it. You can recover what you can. Remember, development charges aren't full cost recovery, but you can recover what you can through the development charge policy that you put into place. Alternatively, you could recover if you have to put in that infrastructure. If you don't have a development charge and you're not getting government grants, there's no magic to it. It has to come either from the existing property taxes, so you'll have to be raising the money through the taxes to pay for that infrastructure, or from your water rates, sewer rates. Maybe even you have some reserves set aside that you could draw. So it's all municipal councils have to try and look towards a balance on when they're considering the charge. Do they, if they're going to put in the infrastructure to accommodate the growth, how much do they recover from development charges? How much do they put as a burden onto the existing or future taxpayers? The growth forecast is provided here. We did have some discussion. The development charge was the forecast, housing forecast, was developed about mid-year, and we needed that in order to sit down with staff and develop the capital listing in order to accommodate the growth. So we have a forecast. You can see the historic building activity is noted in this red line. It's been as low as in the low 20s. It's been as high as in the 160 realm. The average is in and about 62 units per year. And as you can see, as we moved out into the future, we provided for a marginal increase over time. I'd point out that the purple or the bluish color is the forecast for the singles. The medium density is in the burgundy color, and the yellow denotes the high density. And just translating it into numbers, growth forecast provides for about just under 800 residential units over the shorter term. The OP target, we use a longer term for the harder services, the water, wastewater, roads, etc. And then for the Sydenham Heights, the services which will be put into that area, there's about 1,740 units. And you can see the associated populations with each one of those unit forecasts. The non-residential square footage, so commercial, industrial, institutional, is identified correspondingly to each of these time periods. Your current charge right now is just a smidge for a single detached unit, just a titch over 7,000 for a single detached. Multiples are the medium density, and it's about $5,800, and the apartments are the high density, just over $3,600. Non-residential is at $1.85 per square foot. So these are your current charges. As I noted, these numbers that are in place are only reached 80% of the calculated charge, and then they haven't been indexed over time. They'd be probably in the range of over $9,000, $9,500 if you had put in the full charge and if they were indexed to keep up with inflation. The services that we've included are basically the services which were included before. You can see on the bottom here, we've got a city, what we've called citywide, so no matter where you develop within the city, you would pay for these particular services, and there is a charge for that. And then there's the area specific for the more localized water and wastewater servicing costs that have to go into place for that area. So the citywide charge has been calculated at $10,693. I'd note we've made a slight correction to the outdoor recreation. There was somebody had brought up through the process costing on one of the outdoor recreational amenities, and we work with staff to take a look in more detail at that cost, and we had dropped it down, which has dropped the charge for a single detached unit roughly by about $30 per unit. So we made that minor refinement from what's in the study. As we move across, you can see the medium density townhouses, if you will, at about $8,300. Then we have a large and small apartment. Non-residential running at just below $4 a square foot. The Sydenham Heights, so this is the specific services for water and wastewater, adds generally an extra $3,300 for a single detached. So citywide, the charges that are calculated and proposed are $10,700 roughly, and in the Sydenham area, it would be roughly $14,000. Just to note, this is the Sydenham Heights area. This area in particular is exempted from the charge, but the rest of the areas is where the charge would be imposed. Just a quick summary just to identify the current charge and the individual services relative to the calculated charge. You can see roads are up about $700. Fire services have dropped. Transit, there's a minor increase from $0 to $83. Reduction in police. Indoor and outdoor recreation have increased. Libraries decreased. And the growth studies, these are various studies, official plans and master plans and such. And then you can see the water and wastewater charge. Wastewater's gone up, water's come down. And then, as we say, there's no charge in place right now for the area-specific works for the Sydenham Heights. So that's how we've come to the charge. On the non-residential, you can see similar types of differences. There's a number of areas which aren't being collected right now for a number of services, whereas the one that we've calculated provides all of them. Council wishes to exempt certain services or reduce it. As I say, that's within Council's parameters when they're considering the bylaw. Last couple of slides are just comparative slides. These are municipalities which councils in the past have normally asked to compare Owen Sound to. They generally are within, say, the Georgian Triangle. They do include some other separated cities as well from the comparison. You can see areas like Blue Mountain and Collingwood. This is a single detached charge. You can see they're in the $30,000 to $35,000. I might explain the blue is the county charges. The red is the local municipality. And then if you see yellow, not all school boards impose charges, but where they do, they're denoted in the yellow. This is your current charge presently, and then the citywide charge moving from the $7,000 to $10,007, and then this is the Sydenham Heights area, so you can see where they fit relative to other areas. When we take a look at commercial, similar type of thing, you can see there are some municipalities that have exempted the non-residential sector. Hanover, Chatsworth, and you can see that as we move across here, your current charge is just below $2 per square foot. The calculated charge is just below $4, and within the Sydenham Heights, it's around $6 per square foot. Lastly, industrial, you can see one or two more municipalities have exempted industrial in addition to exempting commercial, but a similar type of relationship. You'd also note, if I go back, there's a couple of reductions between commercial and then industrial. So you see some have actually still have an industrial charge, but they've reduced the industrial charge somewhat as well. That concludes my presentation. As I say, I know there's further dialogue. I think we're back to speak with the ad hoc committee before council considers the bylaw, and then we'll be back to talk with council as you're considering the bylaw, and insist in any way that you have any changes or reductions, whatever policies you want, we'll consider.
Great, thank you. I think it's for the public, right? We'll ask your questions later. So if we can turn on the lights, maybe? Nothing there. This is where we get to hear from the public. We encourage you to be clear and concise, and it looks like there's lots of people here that probably want to talk, so save time for your fellows, your fellow friends. Mr. Cruselbrink, do you want to kick us off? I'll get you as you're stepping to the microphone to state your name, and do we need an address? And an address, and before you speak.
Can I just give everybody a copy of what I'm saying?
Sure.
So they can read along?
Yep.
No, just the count.
Okay. Yeah. Great, thanks. Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Boddy, members of council, city staff, and members of the public. I would like to offer my congratulations to the new and returning councillors for the City of Owen Sound. I wish you wisdom and patience in the coming 4 years with the difficult decisions ahead as you shape this community in your vision. Thank you again for providing me with the opportunity to address this new council concerning development charges. Over the years, I've had the privilege of speaking here on several occasions to offer practical knowledge on the issue. Tonight, I would like to offer new information to council that will provide you reasons why the city should reconsider raising development charges, or more importantly, eliminating them completely. The city has recently released a 180-page background study completed by a reputable consulting firm that I'm sure meets all the regulations set forth by the Development Charges Act. Although I seriously question the growth forecasts contained within, or how certain projects may or may not be related to growth, I do not feel my expertise on the study will provide staff or council with any additional merits to alter the presented data. My expertise and tonight's focus will be primarily on the well-being of the community, the working of members who support it, a view from a paying taxpayer, and my experience in local business. Recently, a consulting group released a municipal study that reviews performance measures of municipalities for comparison purposes. A simple search on the internet brought up the 2014 study on the City of Guelph's website, and it was noted that the City of Owen Sound was a participant. A report was also reviewed where Owen Sound City staff had given findings from the study to council in previous years. The following are some of the sections of the report that stood out to me and that seemed to show the current state of growth in Owen Sound. From 2011 to 2014, Owen Sound had the 4th lowest growth rate among participating municipalities in southwestern Ontario, 4th out of 29. This means that our local municipal competitors have added more ratepayers than us. The background study indicates that since 2001, the population has only increased by 151 residents. The report also indicates that all of participating municipalities in Ontario, Owen Sound has the 4th lowest average household income, 4th out of 95, and has the lowest among southwestern Ontario municipalities, last out of 29. This statistic speaks to the loss of middle-class paying jobs in the city and the ability of residents to absorb additional increases for purchases. The report goes on to explain that a tax base is critical for a municipality to generate revenues and an indicator of the richness of an assessment base. In this particular criteria, Owen Sound is the 5th lowest assessment value per capita in southwestern Ontario among participating municipalities, 5th out of 29. The report notes that Owen Sound has the 5th lowest building permit value per capita in Ontario among all participating municipalities, 5th out of 95. Local documents also indicate that 2014 had the fewest building permits issued in nearly 25 years, with only 10 homes being constructed. Lastly, the average residential property taxes in Owen Sound are the highest average tax value for a detached bungalow, as an example, among all participating municipalities in southwestern Ontario, 1st out of 29. In looking at the above data, we can no longer compare ourselves with neighboring communities to set rates just because our development charge values are comparable. We have other factors that tell us increasing costs is not the answer anymore. We must see that we are struggling to grow and that the status quo will not improve conditions. If we use last year's building permit numbers, the new development charge would only generate $107,000 per year, and the proposed increase would only bring an extra $37,200, which is likely less than the consultant was paid to produce the report. So to put that in perspective, it would take nearly 5 years just to raise enough money with development charges to cover the cost of the growth studies identified in the background study 5-3, with no additional funds left to spend on other projects. I also question why we would need 11 growth-related studies over the next 5 years when we are only building 10 to 20 homes per year. If we increase development charges to pay for more services, then all we are doing is treating the symptom and not the underlying problem. The city needs taxes in perpetuity much more than one-time levies on new homeowners to generate marginal revenues. We need families and businesses to move into the city and invest in new homes to strengthen the tax base, boost population, and increase permit values so we can have strong revenues in the long term. All these measures are connected, and we must ask ourselves, is putting more levies on people encouraging them to come? It may not deter those who are determined to move here, but is it inviting the new ones who are yet to decide? I keep getting asked if I really notice a difference in sales with development charges being implemented. But is that really the question that should be asked? We should not be concerning ourselves with maintaining the same statistics, but looking for ways to increase the tax base and create job opportunities. Over the past years, I have noticed that our company is building more and more homes in the areas surrounding Owen Sound. We can all see the homes being constructed all over the place with friends we knew from the city and the children of our co-workers who grew up here. This is because it is simply not affordable to purchase or live in the city anymore. High initial costs and prohibitive taxes over the years is pushing our customers out of the city to smaller centers. As we look around the room tonight, we can see many folks who rely on construction industry for employment. This industry is a large employer and one we should be supporting. The city needs to seriously look at what continuously raising prices on taxes and levies over the years has cumulatively accomplished. We are now last in many key indicators, including new building permits. In the end, I understand that the city must raise enough revenues to balance a budget and provide the important services people expect and deserve. But in the business world, sometimes that does not mean raising prices, but cutting costs to meet a budget. As noted above, perhaps more studies that contain countless costly recommendations are not the answer. The city needs to refocus its revenues to key services, as we've seen so many businesses do in difficult times, not continually raising fees to compensate. The argument that if we do not raise development charges, that the tax base will have to bear the cost does not work, because we have hit the ceiling on the market, and it's not more revenues that need to be looked at, it's less expenses. My recommendation tonight for this council is to start this new term looking at development charges policy differently, and to look at growth in an inviting manner and not punitive. I would suggest that council this year put a 4-year moratorium on all development charges to stimulate growth and provide momentum to the building industry. In conclusion, the city needs to invigorate new growth and strengthen its tax base to create long-term stability for the city and its residents. Collecting taxes over many years will always be more valuable than one-time collections from unsuspecting homebuyers. My comments tonight clearly indicate that Owen Sound is not in a growth area. We need to reconsider the effectiveness of development charges, as they are a hindrance to a much-needed growth in the city. Owen Sound has provided building and related businesses with many opportunities to grow and create jobs for many years. I look forward to working with this new council in making Owen Sound a great community to work and invest in. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Crusobrink. Anyone else?
I have a question.
Yep.
The question I have, in terms of the average house that's built, how much or what percentage of the amount paid for the house would go to labor?
Go to what?
If I may, through
Sorry, go to, we didn't hear him.
what percentage of the house would go to labor?
Okay.
There is if you say have a $250,000 house, would it be 50% for labor, or would it be 40%, 20%?
It depends if you include the lot or not. Are you leaving the lot out of it?
Yes.
If you're leaving the lot out of it, I would say probably 40% or so would be labor.
And most of that labor is going to be local.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else from the public? State your name again and your address.
My name is Ellen Krimble, and I live at 353 Kramer Court. And while the post office considers that address to be Owen Sound, it really is in the municipality of Georgian Bluffs. May I hand out these as well?
Sure.
Thanks. I'd like to thank you, Your Worship, Mayor Boddy, Deputy Mayor Wright, members of council, and specifically the members of the committee who reviewed the existing development fee bylaw. I've had the privilege of finding homes and selling homes for people in Owen Sound and Grey County for the past 34 years. I've noticed in the past decade the increase in the number of people who are choosing to buy or build a new home because of mobility issues, the overwhelming maintenance of their present home, and rising costs. In 2008, in an attempt to plan ahead, my husband and I decided to look for a newer bungalow. We looked in earnest for a building lot, a builder, or a resale home that suited both our needs and our budget. We compared the cost of building in Owen Sound and in the surrounding township. There was no question that building in a community with no development fees, such as Georgian Bluffs, was financially more attractive. The proposed development charge in 2008 for the city of Owen Sound was $7,784. And the development charge in Georgian Bluffs in 2008 was $0. The County of Grey decided to introduce their own version of development charges in 2007, and so that added another $1,018 to the expense of the house. We chose to build in Georgian Bluffs. When the province moved to change the GST rate from 6% to 5% in 2010, we took that as another opportunity to buy our last house before we go into permanent care, and built a townhouse in Green Ridge Estates in Owen Sound. GST had dropped from 6% to 5% in 2009, but effective July 2010, it was rising to 13% and was now called harmonized sales tax. On a $275,000 purchase, the GST was $13,750 with no rebate to us since it was not yet our primary residence. If we chose to wait and build after July 1st, the HST would be $35,750, a difference of $22,000. The Grey County development charge rate had doubled to $2,037 in just 2 years, and with a faltering economy, the development charges for Owen Sound dropped to $2,803. This was incentive to go ahead with our retirement home plans and build before the increased costs were way beyond our budget. We paid $3,639 in taxes on that little townhouse last year. Taxes on the new house I have listed for sale in Woodland Subdivision were $4,807 last year. It's a lot of money when you're trying to appeal to seniors. I understand the need for infrastructure planning. I know the purpose of the development fees is to pay for increased services, and one of the councillors questioned whether the cost should be passed on to existing taxpayers. You are not punishing existing homeowners because they've been driving on the roads that the developers built for decades, contributing their own tax dollars towards that maintenance. In fact, unless your home was built after 1997, all of the services that are provided to your existing home, from water, sewers, internet, police, fire, were all paid for by developers who passed those services over to the city at no charge. I'm certain there were times that the city just decided to put a new road through to part of the city, looking ahead to future development opportunities. The city used the new taxes to pay for the continued use of those services. Why did it work using that formula up until 1997 and it isn't working now? I question the population figures in the study. My husband and I chose to move to Owen Sound in 1981. The population sign I recall showed about 20,000 people. You didn't need to use a lot of paint 33 years later to change one of those numbers to 22,000. Our young people are forced to leave to find employment. Our older population grows at a faster rate than the birth rate. We lose the youth and the younger families to larger centres who can provide economic stability and a better living wage. I question the need for an increase per household for a library charge. With the ability to download books from library services, I think in future our physical library buildings will be very small, and printed matter that you physically hold in your hands will become less and less available. You'll be given an e-reader to check out your reading material choices, and you won't even have to physically go into the building. An increase of this development charge will result in fewer homes being built. The Grey County development fee has almost tripled in the past 5 years. You're now proposing to double the city fee in the area of Sydenham Heights, the last large undeveloped section of Owen Sound crying out for new growth. It appears there is no going back on increases to development fees once they're implemented. Only the town of Leamington, when they lost their biggest employer, decided to forego development fees to encourage building. In these economic times when people are desperate to hold on to a job, let's look at the cycle of real estate and see what effect this proposed fee has. The older couple looking for a newer downtown living chooses to buy a new condo in the professional center. Their home was sold to a family with 3 teenagers and 2 working parents. The older home that family of 5 had is sold to a young family of 1 child looking to get out of their current wartime, and 2 newlyweds eager to get out of mom and dad's basement apartment purchased the wartime. If you increase development charges, you think you've only affected 1 family, but in effect you've affected 4 families. At any point when the costs are prohibitive, someone puts a stop to the cycle and everything grinds to a halt. No one's hiring a painter, laying hardwood floors they bought on sale at Greyfair, no new bathroom fixtures from Fulford's, no new appliances from Leon's, or lighting from Home Depot. When you build a house, the shopping list is endless. So too are the fees. There are water hookup fees, permits for plumbing, curb stops, administrative fees for looking at the 2 sets of plans you must pay for and provide, frontage charges, water meter charge, inspection fees for that, legal fees, land transfer tax, etc., etc. Add 1 more charge and that could be what I call the tipping fee. That's the fee that tips the decision in one direction or the other. When I bought my last car, the dealer told me that the heated seats I wanted would be another $1,750 because they were bundled in with things I didn't want and would never use. That was my tipping point, and I said no. In the end, it's all about money. I like helping people of this community find the perfect lot for their dream house. On days like today, and especially at this time of year, it's very difficult to make a living selling real estate. Don't make the Canadian dream of building a new home a nightmare by putting that opportunity out of a buyer's financial reach. Owen Sound's motto might be, where you want to live, but it must also be where you can afford to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Krimble. Anyone else?
I'm Donna Beatty, and I'm with the Owen Sound Community Association. It is my pleasure to speak to the mayor and council and fellow citizens here tonight. I live at 1278 4th Avenue West. Before I tell you the results of an online poll that the Community Association has recently done about the development charges, I want to tell you about what the Owen Sound Community Association is. We're definitely the new kids on the block. We've formed since the last election, since you've all been elected in office. Congratulations. And what we saw in that last election, and you folks all saw it too, was a real interest in what was going on. A lot of people with a lot of opinions that they wanted to share. And one of the things we all heard a lot about was the need for improved communication. And so the Community Association is really a response to that, and we're all about communication. And what we're trying to do is through our website, Facebook presence, and online polls, and certainly information from council meetings, is keeping our community informed about what's going on, and so that they have an opportunity to give helpful feedback to all of you and as you make important decisions in our community. So that's what we're about, and I know that our chair, Miranda Miller, met with Mayor Boddy and the city manager earlier today. So I hope you're going to hear a lot more from us, and we're going to be seen as a helpful group for all of you. So what we did with the question about the development fees, and it was really very simple because we don't have the in-depth information that some of the people here have. We put out a poll really asking people what they thought about the proposed fee increase and what their comments were. And we had a really low response rate. I'm embarrassed to tell you what it was, but it was very low. And probably half the people, it was as clear as mud in the response, in that we probably had half the people in favor of increasing the development charges, seeing that they were reasonable, it was a possible kind of thing, and the other half saying that in order to be competitive in a place where people wanted to live, increasing fees wasn't something that they wanted. So that's basically the kind of information we've got back. I've got an email report that will be sent to the councillors tomorrow. For some of you, I have a report I can give out tonight, but that's basically the information we had. So we're not very much farther ahead, but we do have feedback from a few more people than you would have heard from otherwise. So I thank you very much for this opportunity for input. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. I'm Tara Hall from Elsinore. Over the last few years, I've been asked many times what my personal interest is in development charges. The answer is pretty simple. My family owns and operates a small business in the area. We employ 10 people in the local construction industry. We may not be a developer or a home builder, but as a subtrade, we too feel the hit when a municipality imposes or increases fees in the industry. When new homes aren't being built in Owen Sound, the subtrades are forced to travel farther to follow the work. Towns and small cities across the province have seen a decline in main industry, leading to school and church closures as people have to go elsewhere to work. And Owen Sound's no different. The Development Charges Act was introduced as a toolkit for municipalities to help fund growth-related capital costs. We've heard town staff, councillors, and consultants from several local municipalities say that development charges make growth pay for growth. Growth-related capital costs shouldn't be on the backs of existing taxpayers. And I couldn't agree more, but only when it's warranted. Vaughan, for example, the city exploded almost overnight. Even though the developers paid for all of the necessary infrastructure to build the subdivisions, obviously the city needed a way to help fund improvements to the existing infrastructure to accommodate the growth. I think a development charge here is warranted. Now let's look at Owen Sound. With a population of 21,674, when my family moved here in 1991, to a population of 21,688 in 2011, 14 people in 20 years is not growth that warrants a development charge. 14 people moving to town doesn't justify the need for a new police officer or library materials. It doesn't mean there aren't enough plow trucks to remove the snow or parks for kids to play at. It simply allows the city to rake in more money without having to listen to the opposition of the existing ratepayers when raising their taxes. It's pretty evident that Owen Sound isn't growing. Perhaps we need to look behind us to see where we've been, to know where we want to go. In 1989, Owen Sound issued 110 building permits, single detached homes. 10 building permits last year. Perhaps it's time to think about abolishing the development charges altogether to promote development and growth within the city. In my opinion, the Watson & Associates development charge background study of 2014 was an expensive and unnecessary expenditure for the city. With the 10 permits issued within the city, more than half the money that was brought in was used to cover the cost of the inconsistent study. Now, I call it inconsistent because I've done my homework. I've read the Development Charges Act. I've read the background study by Watson & Associates, and I've also read the previous study done by Meridian Planning in 2010. I found some alarming discrepancies. Take this, for example. Every year, the NHL puts on spectacular outdoor hockey games, known to many as the Winter Classic. Last year's games were more ambitious and costly than previous years, as they had to build and cool an outdoor rink in California. During the day, the temperatures rose to above 90 degrees, so you can imagine how much was put into constructing and cooling its ice surface. It's estimated to have cost them approximately $800,000 to do this. Watson & Associates background study shows the Harrison Park rink to be valued at $1,455,000. I didn't realize the Winter Classic was coming to Owen Sound. When determining the maximum allowable development charge, the municipality must present a current cost to replace each item as inventory. From buildings to snowblowers, each item's replacement value is used in the calculation. When comparing the inventory lists from Watson's background study to Meridian Planning study done in 2009, some of the values are questionable. For example, there's a Dodge half-ton pickup truck. Its value was $23,000 in 2009. It had a replacement value of $25,000 in 2014. Seems legit. But a John Deere loader tractor's replacement value was $40,824 in 2009. 5 years later, $74,100. My point is that the discrepancies or overinflated numbers in the background study help the consultants push up the maximum allowable development charge. The same goes for population projections. The more growth they can prove, the higher the development charge they can recommend. And of course, they'll want you to implement a development charge because it just means you'll have to hire them to do a new study every 5 years. We don't need a study in Owen Sound to tell us that we aren't growing. We can see that. But when we pay for a study that projects growth and finds a way to pay for all these capital costs and improvements that the city needs without raising taxes, it looks pretty appealing. Unfortunately, it doesn't always tell the whole story. Watson & Associates have listed 25 projects to be paid for in full or in part by development charge money. Each of these projects require money to be set aside for future replacement as well as annual operating expenses. Unfortunately, there's no analysis as to whether or not these capital costs are actually affordable for the city to maintain. The total annual expenditures, so the future replacement costs and the total operating expenses annually, are $4,075,507. Where's that money going to come from? What impact is that going to have on property taxes? Is it even affordable for the city to carry that? Keep in mind, the growth projected in the background study isn't guaranteed. Those annual property taxes from all the new homes expected aren't guaranteed. But with a development charge increase, what is guaranteed is a closed for business sign on the front door of City Hall. You want growth? So do we. Let's fuel the largest industry in Owen Sound. Let's keep the money here. Let's keep our small businesses in business. Let's keep our employees employed and their families here. I urge you to please reconsider development charges altogether, and in an affordable way, let's make Owen Sound the place you want to live.
Great. Thank you.
Fred Hoekstra, 323 3rd Avenue West. Mayor Boddy, council members, city staff, ladies and gentlemen. Don't worry, council members, I'll be a lot more brief. Last fall, Owen Sound held an election, and we, the residents and property owners, elected a lot of new faces to city council, or perhaps changed the chair you're sitting in. I, for one, thought the message was loud and clear. The voters were not happy, and were giving a mandate for change. I hope this council hasn't already forgot that. Here we are tonight discussing an old idea like development charges, an idea that has likely, in my opinion, played its own part in driving new development and building to a crawl in our city. A pattern of less and less homes being built in Owen Sound has developed, largely, I suspect, to the decisions of past councils. I wasn't aware of the exact figures, but I see from the chart we saw, the last 4 years have been confirming that, and if we added last year's statistics now to that chart, I think the projection going forward for new housing would be rather bold, I would say. If this council doesn't make some changes to stop this pattern, then reality indicates that this discussion on development charges is going to be pretty much irrelevant. There will not be enough new development in Owen Sound for such charges to have any significant impact on the budget for our city. City Council, please don't hang your hat on raising development charges to try to control property taxes. Getting the spending under control in this city is likely the best and only solution for that. It's no secret where you need to start. The old council said they could not or would not tackle the big pieces of the pie that make up the city expenses budget. We're going to be watching to see if this new council is willing and able to make the tough decisions that are necessary to get spending down. I believe you have been given a mandate for change. Please don't forget that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse my appearance. I had to take off my hat and my coat. I had to wear my hat. I work in construction. I couldn't afford a haircut. Mayor Boddy, members of council, my name is Doug Sorby, R3 Markdale, Ontario, here representing the Grey Bruce Home Builders and Trades Associations. Just to echo what all the other speakers have already said, I think as the last man said, it boils down to common sense. I unfortunately didn't have a chance to vote for you folks. I don't live in this municipality, but I think the people that did vote, voted for that reason. They thought you had their best interests in hand. Whether you do or not, I don't know. Okay, so the meeting tonight is the development charges, or what I could call it, new home buyer's tax. Okay, the County of Grey, on an average home, is charging $4,271.42. If the municipality of Owen Sound, City of Owen Sound, tax on their $10,700, that brings us up to $14,971. Let's call that $15,000. Is the $15,000 up front, when new home buyers are counting their pennies for every little thing they can, is the $15,000 up front and the possibility of lost development worth what the tax dollars for the years to come after the fact would bring? When you introduce charges that are too high, people simply don't build. The revenue only comes if the developers build, and this proposal will slow the market down further. It's not like it's booming out there. So going back to where I started, I think the people of Owen Sound elected this council for the purpose of their common sense. If you can't garner the strength amongst you to abolish the development charges in Owen Sound, at least have the common sense to leave them where they are. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Jim Stark, and I reside in Southampton, Ontario, but own a number of residential properties in Owen Sound. I'd like to thank the mayor and council for listening this evening. There's been some excellent information that hopefully you will really take the time to consider. I understand the whole concept of what you guys are faced with. I was personally on Southampton's town council for some years, and they're very difficult, tough decisions to be made. So I have sympathy for you there. My wife, who's with me here this evening, we chose to invest into Owen Sound, thinking that it was a great place to build a home. We use them as rental units to build portfolio for retirement and secure a wonderful, hopefully, lifestyle. Living in Southampton, we chose to bring our children to Owen Sound. We educated them for the first 6 years in a private school in Owen Sound, and then they continued in the two of the schools here, grade 7, 8, which is closed now, and then into a high school. Through my time coming with my children to school here in Owen Sound, along with my wife who worked in one of those schools, in the private school, I got very, very close with all the young people in the schools, and through that I found myself volunteering, which got to be incredible amounts of hours, hundreds of hours. And one year I was surprised with an award from the Blue Water Education Board for all of that time spent with the children. It was wonderful time spent with the children, helping them, hopefully planning their future. It saddens me today when I see those young people. They're not here. Some are, no jobs. It's a very bleak economy in Owen Sound right now. We have chosen, my wife and I, in the last several years, not to invest more money in Owen Sound because we don't see where the values will increase. We don't see the potential for tenants. When you find a home that costs you $300,000 to build, you have to have a substantial rent, and that clientele's not around. So it's very difficult now to consider Owen Sound as a place to invest your money in. We love this city. We love the area, Bruce and Grey counties. We think there's many, many things to offer here. The city needs to promote itself more and more and more to try and get that growth. We have family that live in the Greater Toronto area in communities where the developmental charge was absolutely important. Take the city of Georgetown. It used to be smaller than Owen Sound. I can remember in my younger days quite a hockey rivalry between Port Elgin, Owen Sound, Georgetown, Barrie, those cities. They have exploded in population. Subdivisions, 300 houses at a time, not in just one area, surrounding the core of those cities. It made sense for developmental charges to go in there. They had to have it. If you go back even a little bit farther and look at developmental charges, to me it was a sneaky way for the province to continue with downloading costs. Okay? They don't pay for anything anymore, yet our taxes still continue to go up and up and up. I'm going to give you a little different angle here you might consider. And I thought very hard this year about running for council in both my municipality and maybe over here. I believe that the fight has to happen on our smaller municipal elected people to get after the province and the federal government and say, stop with this nonsense. It doesn't work in our smaller communities. We have the right to live in a nice area, a small place. We have the right to educate our children here, to be able to shop downtown in local shops, promote local business. You people, the province, makes it almost impossible to do business anymore. We're continually, council, collecting tax dollars and passing it on. And what are we getting back for it? We used to get water money, we used to get sewer money, we used to get road money, everything It all came back. It seemed to make sense in the day, but they're keeping it and nothing's coming back. So now we look on an industry to take and put another cost on it. Building industry has been from the very inception of every community. That's how they got started. Somebody came and built a business, employed some people, built some houses. The building industry is a steady, constant, continual growth. It's not like the other big industries that have left. They're gone. They took advantage, they made their money, and they left town. The building industry is here forever. We need to find ways to help it grow. Not to stagger its growth, but to help its growth. It's a very hard balancing act to find that the numbers have to work. I want to throw something out there, consider it a bit humorous. My father was a chief of police in smaller municipalities across Ontario, and we used to have many conversations around the kitchen table about how local councils, municipalities worked. And he used to kind of say, cheek and tongue, we have champagne taste, but we really only have a beer budget. And I think, you know, a lot of times that we are faced with that. You get bombarded with things, costs, we want this, we need this, but do we really need it? When we look at how much the city really has grown. I've been in the construction industry for 35 years. I've worked in Owen Sound and bought homes here and property in the last 25 years, and I just do not see the growth. The growth in my community, Southampton, Port Elgin, Saugeen Shores, has been way more than it's been here. Yet I think the potential for Owen Sound to grow is definitely around. We can't compare on the chart to the other bigger cities that have to have all these new services put in because their numbers, their populations are quadrupling 10 times what they used to be. So I really want to ask council to really consider and think about how you can help the building industry. If you look on the news today, you heard a big announcement by the provincial and federal governments are going into Guelph with $100 million to help one industry provide 1,200 jobs. Could you imagine what we could have here in our city with some investment like that? The challenge is out for you guys. Take it serious and let's find a way to make growth happen in this city. Not by taxing what's here, but going out and bringing more back. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Now, anyone else? Getting down to the last chance. Anyone else wish to speak, please step to the microphone. It's going once. Going twice. Okay, 3 times. I sense that no one else wishes to speak. Again, if you wish to, maybe you're going to cover this, if you wish to write a report or send something to us to think about, please do so. We'll maybe set a date. Do you want to go ahead? Councillor McManaman, go ahead.
Sure, thank you, Your Worship. I was just going to talk about next steps or where we go from here. So Mr. Becking had mentioned that setting a date for public comment at some point. We've heard a lot of information tonight. We've received a lot of correspondence with some different ideas or different suggestions or comments. Staff will need time to respond to that for us and give us their thoughts on that. So I'm just wondering, is the end of the week an appropriate time to, I'll look to Mr. Becking.
If I may, Your Worship, I think I've spoken to the deadlines that we're facing, and I think council needs to make a decision sooner rather than later. If I could suggest perhaps an end of this week deadline being the 16th, close of business of the 16th, to get any further comments back in, Staff will then consolidate that and organize a meeting of the ad hoc committee if that's what council wishes to have the matter referred back. We'll organize a meeting, if not sometime next week, then certainly the week following, which would be the week of the 26th to the 30th, to get the ad hoc committee together to review all of the input received, and then perhaps generate a recommendation for council's consideration.
So we ask that any further submissions be into the City Hall to the clerk's office by 5 p.m. Friday, the January 16th, 2015.
That is correct.
Great, thank you. So I think the next step is to declare the...
Don't worry about it.
4:30, not 5 o'clock. I'm sure if it gets here by 5, somebody will read it. Declare that the public meeting be closed. And
motion that we reconvene the,
you want to push a button?
I'll move that we move to the regular council meeting and reconvene that business.
And all in favor? Carried. We'll just maybe wait for a minute. So we're up to number 9 in the agenda, which is a deputation by me. Maybe go down to the other microphone. Good evening, Council, from this side of the microphone. I'm here to give a brief deposition, then I'm going to ask Mr. Cleverly to join me and complete it. As we know, last weekend we were lucky to be one of 25 cities in Canada to be the host of Rogers Hometown Hockey. We had some fantastic coverage for our city, for tourism that was national coverage with a lot of people watching. Some great videos, some great stories of our hockey history. And a great fun time in the parking lot in front of City Hall, the Bayshore Community Centre, that became a festive atmosphere, and it was so fun to be around. It was fun to be 12 again. Lots of games and things for kids and activities, and I think there's some pictures that are probably going by on the screen. We want to thank Rogers and Rogers Hometown Hockey for choosing us and providing us with such a great event. They also provided us with a couple of really neat gifts because we hosted them. I don't know how we're going to get this on to the camera, but there is a bench that's over to my left that is made out of hockey sticks that's pretty impressive. I don't know where we're going to put it, but it's lots of fun to sit on. It feels good. If I only had that imagination when I was a little kid breaking hockey sticks and getting in trouble with my parents back when they were $6 a ticket or a stick. The other neat thing that is behind me is a a fantastic framed sweater signed by Bobby Ryan, his number 6 from the Ottawa Senators. And we all know that Bobby Ryan played here in Owen Sound and got his start and had a great story on TV. So I want to thank Mr. Cleverly and his staff for doing our side of things. I'm just going to cover off the economic impact. I was talking to somebody behind the TV studio. There was approximately 50 or 60 people that came in for almost a week just with this crew. Another 50 or so that were hired with Owen Sound for the weekend and were paid to work. They rented hotels, they ate in restaurants. They're in by about Tuesday, and just that alone, the economic impact. All of them were very happy with Owen Sound, and they went out bragging about what a great time they had here, and that's a great way, word of mouth, to get our city out to others across the country as these people go out, and as well as the TV coverage. Doug, let you talk?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Boddy. It's a pleasure to speak to you, and I'll be brief, but it was a very exciting event, and there's so many little stories of things that I heard about, and just in one of the images we just saw a tweet from the NHL mentioning Owen Sound and a picture of Ron McLean and a group of hockey players, young hockey players at Harrison Park. It mentioned Harrison Park, it mentioned Owen Sound, and that's over 3 million followers on Twitter that would have that follow the NHL. So that's just one little story, and of course the national exposure that we got, there's no price that could be put on that. So I want to thank Council to begin with. Of course, it was your predecessors that voted to have this event come to Owen Sound. It came to us at a very minimal cost, I must say, and certainly less than what we had originally budgeted. And I think you could almost say that it's priceless, the value that we received from it. They were extremely happy. The Rogers people were extremely happy with Owen Sound. They were very happy with the response they received from our city team and from the community. And the weather didn't deter them people a bit, as you can see from the pictures. There was hundreds and sometimes over 1,000 people on that site over the course of the weekend, and it was phenomenal for all concerned, I believe. And I just want to take a moment to say thank you again to Council, thank you to the City Manager, thank you to each of the senior managers, and thank you to the members of the departments from Fire, Police, Operations, Community Services, and right across the board. I've been with the city for 12.5 years, and I can't remember another event where we've had such phenomenal cross-departmental cooperation as we had with this event. In some ways, we didn't really have to do a whole lot, and that's a good thing, because Rogers people, they kind of had their whole show, but being able to support it and to really put a good foot forward for the city was tremendous. I also want to just to take a moment to thank the Owen Sound Attack and Brent Fisher in particular. They were very supportive and cooperative all the way through. Of course, it's very beneficial for the Attack as an organization, but they recognize the value, the community value, and certainly they were keen to see many different elements of the city included as they were in the broadcast. I think it's important to give a picture of Owen Sound as a well-rounded community. I also want to thank April Robinson, who was a phenomenal project liaison all the way through. It was great to have her support and her assistance with putting all this together. In particular, we had almost a full army of volunteers compared to what the Rogers people were looking for. We pretty much filled a full slate for them, and they hadn't experienced that elsewhere. So again, kudos from the Rogers people to Owen Sound. The coordinator that we worked with from Rogers also told us that it was her favorite broadcast so far of all the 13 that had been done. She thought the stories that talked about Owen Sound were just great stories, and I think everybody who saw the broadcast would agree. It's just too bad that there was a junior game the same night, but there's nothing we could do about that. Anyway, thank you again, and congratulations. A good pat on the back to everybody who was involved with making this happen.
Thank you very much, Doug. right now. Yes, Councillor Roach.
I believe that the bench and the picture belong at the Bayshore. So I would like to see us move the bench down to the Bayshore entranceway so that everybody can see it. That's where this all took place. And that's where hockey takes place. And I think that the picture, Bobby Ryan had his career at the Bayshore. So I would like to make a motion that we put those two artifacts down at the Bayshore.
So you move that we move these things to the Bayshore.
And have them on display for the public.
Other comments? Push your button.
Sorry. I'm just worried about the security, like we'd have to have, the bench would have to be bolted down or something, but we'd have to make sure that, maybe make that part of the motion, just a suggestion.
We'll find a way.
We'll find a way.
All in favor? Good, carried, thank you. Number 10 on the agenda is public question period. Anyone have any questions? Move on quickly, thank you. Correspondence received, which direction of council is required? Deputy Mayor Wright.
I would like to move 11A, 11B, and 11C. Those are appointments that have come in from those committees. 11A is the appointment to the Tom Thompson Art Gallery. 11B is the appointment of Rob Wyatt, who has lots of experience in housing. He was with the County Housing Authority, to the nonprofit housing, and Jan Chamberlain, who is a former councillor, to the Ontario Municipal Nonprofit Housing Corporation as well.
Can I ask you to make an amendment on 11A, which is the Art Gallery Board? It specifically names Councillor Gregg, who I don't know if he will be on. I wonder if we can pass it somehow to have whatever councillor chooses that board a little bit later tonight.
I will withdraw 11A, and we vote on it separately.
Or we can do it and just leave that.
Leave it open.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Councillor McManaman?
Sorry, and the only other point on that, the city appointee isn't decided until the next meeting. I'm just noticing that here.
Oh, okay, so there's actually two amendments there, one being the councillor and one being the public member appointed by council that hasn't been done yet.
So those two.
That's fine. So
Yeah, okay. Everyone understands that?
Yeah.
Okay, and all in favor of the motion, moving those three appointments? Carried, great, thank you. So that takes us down to 11D, which is the correspondence from Town of Blue Mountains regarding sharing of the provincial uploading of social service costs. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I asked that this item be placed on the agenda, and and I look to yourself and Councillor Wright for maybe some more information. But when you read through it, those costs were charged to the city over the number of years, put into the social services reserve. It looks like if the budget's approved, we would, they're recommending half of it come back to the municipality, the other half stay in a reserve at the county for infrastructure. I tend to agree with the Town of Blue Mountains that all of it, if it was collected for social services, and it's not needed for social services, it should be returned to all the municipalities. If they have a discussion about infrastructure at the county or the need for infrastructure, that's another discussion that they should have. So I understand why the staff are recommending this, but anyway, I tend to agree with the Town of Blue Mountains. The only question I'd have, and I don't know, maybe this would be for Mr. Ritchie, I'd ask, it says it be returned based on assessment. This money would have been collected over a number of years. The assessment would have been different many years. The assessment today for Owen Sound, for instance, is much different than it would have been 5 or 6 years ago. And that's a question. Is that worth looking at? The assessment, the returning it based on the assessment that the year it was collected?
Through you, Your Worship, it would be something we could speak with Mr. Wepler about. Yes, our assessment share has been decreasing, so it may, although I'd have to really think about how that will work out in the long run, but it may be worth investigating with Mr. Wepler, certainly, that particular part of it.
So anyway, I put it open, but I'll put it on the floor that we support the motion from the town of Blue Mountains, and I'll put that out there for further discussion.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Wright.
Thank you very much. Tomorrow morning is corporate services, and at the time that this motion was brought to county, it was asked that that Mr. Wepler bring us what it would look like if we gave 100%. Could we table this motion until after we have that information, and I would bring that information back to council? This decision will not be made until March at the county, and so we do have lots of time, and in the meantime, perhaps then we can talk about it, but Mr. Wepler is coming back with what 100% would look like if they returned that, and he would also have the information of what the potential budget would look like from the county next year. As it would be a 5% increase to the city this year from the county, which is going to come in as a minus because of the 50%. If we don't have the 50% next year, will it come in at a 5% increase? Those are things that will be talked about at corporate services, and I'd have better information for you after tomorrow, if that's okay.
That is certainly fine with me. I support tabling for more information.
Okay, so the motion is on the floor. We have a motion to table that motion
until we have further information.
And other comments on the tabling? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Great, thank you. 11E is correspondence from the Mike Boudrais, sorry, of the Freedom Riders. I'm looking at the letters and I can't remember what they stand for. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. Talking about putting a flagpole up in the new Corporal Robert T. James Mitchell Park sounds like a good idea. I'm just wondering, as we get things like this, if it wouldn't be appropriate to ask for a staff report back through committee on just the ins and outs of it. Or maybe I'll look to the staff if that's
Ms. Colton?
necessary.
Through your worship, it looks like the Freedom Riders are offering to pay for it and install it in a way that's in keeping with what the city wishes. We do have a flying policy, CMA 34. They talk about flying the flag, Canadian flag, in accordance with Heritage Canada protocols, and that's what's contemplated by our policy. The only thing I would suggest is they're seeking special approval to fly the flag at half-mast on December 28th. And if council wishes, we could include an amendment to the flag flying policy that would allow that. There have been other amendments to allow it to be flown at half-mast for certain events. So if council wishes, you could include that.
Councillor Kepke.
Do you also need to include October 3rd? Because they're asking for it to be flown at two dates, yes, thanks.
And so, Councillor McManaman, do you really need a report?
Well, I suppose not. Maybe that was the report. So I suppose if it's as simple as that, we approve the flag installation and we ask for an amendment to the policy for those two dates for this particular park.
Great. Any other comments? All in favor? Good. Carried. Thank you. 11F is correspondence from Jack Deere Rogers. This is a letter from Rogers Cable just noting that they will not be covering our council meeting the week of January 19th, which is our next meeting, because they will be covering Ontario curling of all things. Yeah, do we have a meeting on the 19th? Oh, this is working out even better. So maybe some of us that like curling that I'm surrounded by will want to stay at home and watch that anyway. So we really don't have to do much. Good. Councillor Lemon has moved that we receive that correspondence. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Correspondence from Michael Chan, Minister, Ministry of Citizenship, Immigration and International Trade, regarding volunteer recognition programs. Councillor, Ms. Coulter.
Each year in, I think it's February, the Recreation and Parks Advisory Committee deals with Volunteer of the Year for the city. Usually this correspondence is forwarded to that committee. They would consider, if appropriate, any nomination that would be made in the subsequent year. So unless council has anyone or any other places they'd like it to be sent, I would recommend you would refer it to Rec and Parks Advisory Committee.
Councillor Kepke?
I'll make that motion to refer this correspondence to Parks and Rec Committee.
Okay, other comments? All in favor? Great, carried, thank you. And the last matter, 11H, is correspondence from Jerry Traynor from the Owen Sound and Area Senior Center of McQuay Tannery Building regarding age-friendly communities grant. I note that our first report in 12A1 just below that covers the same thing, so I wonder if we can just move on and cover it under the reports. Everyone's good with that? Good? Yeah. Sorry. Motion to receive that. Okay, motion to receive by Councillor McManaman. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. So we're now down to reports of committees and staff. It's 12A or 12A1 in our agenda. Ms. Corsi, you present this?
Thank you, Your Worship. This report is regarding, as you said, the Age-Friendly Community Planning Grant Program that was just announced by the province. It is to support local communities and governments to undertake planning activities that will result in local age-friendly action plans, implementation, and evaluation activities. The program supports the broader provincial goal to have age-friendly communities throughout the province. Communities that embrace the goal of becoming age-friendly can review plans and development efforts in the community to ensure that they reflect the community's age-friendly goals. We also know that our local seniors group has indicated an interest in applying for this funding, and they want to do it on a slightly broader basis through Grey and Bruce counties. And they have made that submission at the county level. I can tell you I have had correspondence and direct conversation with their executive director. I think that's a great initiative. I've indicated that they would certainly have our staff support, and we would also be coming to them as it applies to our own strategic plan. So I think it's a very good initiative and one that I'm recommending that you consider supporting their resolution.
Great, thank you, Councillor Kepke.
I'll move the recommendation that we do support this initiative.
Okay, and anyone else want to discuss? Any comments? No? Okay. Oh, Councillor Gregg.
I have just a concern with the manner of a group in our community coming to council, and the line item in there almost reads to me as in we're being mandated to provide a council member on a committee. And I just have a question about that. It's just the manner that is put forth in front of us that I don't like, that we can set somewhat of a precedent here that's any number of people can come forward with that request. And
I think we're receiving the letter, and go ahead, Ms. Corsi.
I think that's a very important point that Councillor Gregg has brought up. I am meeting with Ms. Traynor tomorrow on Wednesday, and why don't I discuss that further with her?
Yeah, just if you look at the recommendation, I don't think that that's specifically in the recommendation that we're passing it now.
Although we do need to pass a resolution supporting it so that they can submit that to when they make their application, because that has to be in shortly.
And that's the recommendation, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So if we need further refinements on who should sit on that committee, Council, as you will note later in your agenda, you are very busy, and certainly staff can commit to keeping in good communication on this project.
Great. Okay, other comments, discussion? No? All in favor of the motion? Great, thank you. Carried. 12A2, report from bylaw coordinator, fees and charges. You going to present that? Mr. Smith, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've set out here in my report the review of the fees and charges bylaw for 2015. In my report, I set out the steps that we've taken in order to come up with this bylaw and some of the past progress in order to refine it. This year, staff is suggesting that the bylaw itself is very good and it's working well for the city. We're just reviewing the certain fees within the bylaw. And in my financial implications section, I've listed some of the fees that we're reviewing. There's also a summary at the end of the report. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Deputy Mayor Wright?
I do have a question, and I think it's a new, I don't know where it is. It's here, you're incorporating a new plumbing fee of $4 per fixture. Tell me what that is. What is that for? I mean, if I go to renovate my bathroom, you're charging me $4 for a sink, $4 for a tub, $4 for a toilet, and a minimum of $95. Is that what this is? A brand new charge?
Perhaps through your worship, I could answer that question. The idea is really to streamline the permit process primarily for a new home. So historically, for a new home, you got a building permit and you also received a plumbing permit, and there was a minimum fee for both of those. Under the new proposal, we would eliminate the need for a second permit for a new house. So if you were building a new house, you would get one permit. It would include a plumbing fee, and it would be calculated at $4 a fixture plus that $95 minimum fee. We expect a very modest increase in revenue. So in other words, the consumer isn't going to be paying much more. We'll have one file instead of two. If you were renovating your bathroom, you would come in and probably just get a plumbing permit. So in that case, we would issue only a plumbing permit. But for a new home, the idea is that there would be one permit.
Thank you very much for explaining that. That didn't come across to me when I went over this. Thank you.
Councillor Thomas?
Yes, through your worship. Under Kelso Beach, under Community Service, Parks and Recreation Division, there's a new fee for rental of Kelso Beach for large-scale commercial operations of $600 a day, including a setup and teardown days, or $1 per ticket sold, whichever is greater. And that, to me, based on the rates that are currently charged for Kelso Beach, that's almost double, and it seemed a bit excessive to me. And I just wonder if we could have a bit more of an explanation of how that figure was arrived at.
Again, through you, your worship, the fee for Kelso Beach is about $309 today, and that's typically charged for the rental of the entire park. And primarily we see it rented to nonprofit groups like Summer Folk, where they rent it for a period of number of days. There's another fee to rent just the amphitheater. For large commercial events, something like a big music fest, there's a significant amount of staff resources that go into supporting events like that. So the idea was that it would be at a higher fee if it's a for-profit event at the $600 a day or $1 a ticket sold. So that's to cover the city's costs and get a fair revenue for the city when there's these large events happening in the parks.
Further question?
If I can just follow up on that. Will we have some point at which a definition of large-scale event and commercial event versus nonprofit will come when we can, like I'm a little leery about passing that fee now without really knowing what it's going to apply to?
I think the fees bylaw isn't before you tonight. It would come back on February 9th. So what I would propose is a sort of an addendum that would help explore, at what point is this fee going to be charged? When is it a non-profit event, and when is it another type of commercial event?
Councillor Dodd, did you have your hand up? No? Okay, it was Councillor Lemon then.
Through you, your worship, getting back to this plumbing permit, what's the current plumbing permit fee for a new house?
Through your worship, it says in the summary it's a new fee, but we have been issuing plumbing permits, so I can't tell you off the top of my head. I'd have to endeavor to get back to council. But I do know it's very close to what the old, actually I did bring the fees bylaw, so if you just give me 1 second.
Mr. Smith, yeah.
Put it up on the screen if that helps. Big enough to read.
What schedule, Jeff, what page?
14.
So right now the fee is $42 per dwelling unit. The minimum fee is $95 and it included buildings and accessory structures. So that was for residential. So now the minimum fee is the same, I believe, and then it's $4 per fixture. So there will not be a significant change, but for the user, you'll get one permit, fill out one application, and it should be a little streamlined.
Well, here it says $42 per dwelling unit, right? Now, then, that doesn't make sense, $42.95.
I'd have to get back to you on that.
Could you do that, please?
And you done, Councillor Lemon, for now?
It's just that some of these service charges, I really wonder if we're not putting an awful lot of costs out there. An example, there's a fixture account, and then there's the, somewhere stacks are in there, I believe. Fixture count stacks, $20 per stack, and then it says exempt.
And you realize that's the bylaw that's in place and it's been there for years?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I do. I'm getting confused as to what we're doing here. So there'd only be one plumbing fee, and that would include stacks, that would include leaders.
I don't have enough experience administering this bylaw to answer that question, so I'd have to get back to council with that information.
If you would.
Okay, so Councillor Kepke is next.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is the effective date of the fees. Are they all varied, or are they all have a particular effective date?
Through you, Your Worship, any new fees approved today will be effective February 1st, 2015. Some of the fees, all the fees in here will be effective at that date. Council has also set in various schedules in the fees and charges bylaw fees that automatically increase at certain periods. So for example, when you're booking facilities, if you want to book years in the future, those fees are already set, so you have certainty over what that fee would be.
Done for now. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. Question for Ms. Coulter. We talked earlier in the orientation today about the building department. Am I to understand all the fees are supposed to be cost recovery? That's the idea? It should be a break even?
That's correct. The building code actually requires that we produce an annual report and make that available to the public, and it is to have a net zero.
And so my question, at least the projected budget, isn't a net zero at this point, correct?
That's correct. The division is expected to cost the city money in 2015 and did in 2014 as well.
So is it anticipated that prior to budget, we would look at increasing these fees again? Or are you saying this would be 2014 and we'll deal with that in the 2015 budget? 2016.
Yeah, my goal is actually to get it to Community Planning and Heritage Advisory Committee, but not leave it until 2016. So it may result in a subsequent amendment to the fees bylaw partway through the year.
Okay, thank you. And the last question, the refundable final deposit, inspection deposit, removing that, and I remember when that was brought in, but just maybe some more background. You're saying it hasn't worked as we thought?
Yeah, Mr. Hicks tells us that the refundable final inspection deposit isn't working to make people call and get their final inspection deposit. What the building code says is that you don't do a final inspection, you do an occupancy inspection. So that has been recommended for inclusion. You'll pay that small fee as part of your building permit fee, and we'll get rid of the inspection deposit and the administration of the refund of it because it's not contemplated under the Act.
Okay, thank you.
And so, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I noticed that this is just being posted on the website and at City Hall. Do we not have to have a public meeting on this when we change or raise fees and charges?
Through your worship, the notice bylaw does refer to a requirement to have to meet a regulation in the Municipal Act. That regulation has been repealed. So there's no requirement to have a public meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so what are we doing with the report? Someone want to move something? Councillor McMahon?
I'll move the recommendation that we implement these new fees and charges as recommended.
And Councillor Lemon?
Just one question. If we get things going locally and all of a sudden people start building and there's a surplus in that department, what happens to that surplus? Do we refund it?
The Act provides that a surplus can be held by the municipality for up to 5 years. It provides how we are to deal with a surplus, and that would go back into the calculation of fees in subsequent years. Okay, so the Act provides for that.
So a couple of years ago when things were busy, we had a surplus then, I'm assuming.
Your Worship, I can't comment on that. I haven't, I don't know which year you would be
Mr. Ritchie may have.
Through your worship, we may have had a year here or there with a surplus, but we certainly have not had a surplus overall for any accumulation of years in any division.
Okay, so I'll call the vote. All in favor? Good, carried. Thank you. 20A3, council appointment to boards and committees.
Through you, your worship, I'll just give a brief overview, especially for those watching at home. I have the numbers 1 to 8 in an envelope, and I will have each member of council draw a number. Once numbers have been drawn, council will begin their selections beginning with number 1 and continuing numerically through to number 8. The number 8 will choose again, and the selections will continue in reverse numerical order until all of the positions have been filled. For those members of council already appointed to a committee, they may take a pass in any round of selection for each appointment they already have. Once selections have been made, I ask that a motion be passed by council for a bylaw to be brought forward to appoint members of council to serve on boards and committees with terms effective February 1st, 2015. I'd also like to note that at our last council meeting, council passed a motion that one of the council members from the Accessibility Advisory Committee also be the council member on the Prevention of Falls Committee. So just to keep that in mind when you're selecting for the Accessibility Advisory Committee, I'm not sure how you want to do that. If it's the first person who selects the Accessibility Advisory Committee is automatically on the Prevention of Falls, or if you just want to note that when you make your selection.
And let the two councillors maybe, Councillor Lemon, you've got some experience.
I have a question in respect to the wastewater treatment plant upgrade.
Can you just hold that just for a second? We're just trying to solve what we're going to do with accessibility and which of the two councillors will go to the Prevention of Falls.
First named.
First named. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I know we discussed this Prevention of Falls last meeting as sort of a way to keep our hand in on the health unit. And since that time, I've been kind of, this committee meets once, twice a year. If we have concerns with the health unit, I'm not sure this committee meeting once or twice a year is really our in on that committee. I know we have discussed this last meeting, but I'm just raising it again since I've been thinking about it. I don't know whether it's really necessary to serve here. If we have concerns with the health unit, it's not going to be through this. We're not going to deal with it through this committee, that's all. So I'd recommend we don't have it.
So
A motherhood issue
Do
is
you wanna-
basically all it is.
Deputy Mayor Wright, do you want to hit your button and answer that one? Sorry.
It's just I call it a motherhood issue. It's just the fact that somebody from the city is attached to something at the health unit, whatever it is, whether it's once a year or whatever, that's just it. As far as issues from the health unit, we will always be kept informed on what's going on on the health unit, because it's the county that's the member of the health unit, and so we will always know what's going on at the health unit. But it's just that the city then would keep a foot in the door kind of thing.
You'd support keeping it?
I support keeping it, yeah.
And Councillor Lemon, you had your hand up on that?
That's fine, if we're going to keep it.
Okay. So we're all, go ahead.
One other comment, the development charge study ad hoc, where myself, Councillor Lemon, Councillor Thomas are on, there's only probably going to be one more meeting. And I'm just not sure whether that should be used as I mean, we're talking committees for the entire year, there's probably one more meeting. I don't know whether that should be used for a pass. We're all also on the wastewater treatment plant committee, which is going to meet throughout the year numerous times. I'm just wondering if the pass for development charges with one more meeting isn't really in the spirit of the taking a pass.
So you're moving, eliminating one extra pass for Councillors Lemon, McManaman, and Thomas. Is that what your motion is?
Yes, that's what I think I'm going to say, yes.
And any comments on that motion? All in favor? Okay, we're okay with that? Okay.
One question.
Yeah.
On the wastewater treatment plant upgrade, you've got 4 on there already filled, but Councillor Twaddle was on that, and he's no longer a councillor, so how can that be filled? You're on that,
Yes, I took his position there.
but you haven't been appointed to it.
We did that in our December meeting, I think. We appointed, fulfilled the appointments there.
I thought we in December fulfilled the appointments till the end of January. Or till the end of February, or January.
Maybe I'll ask the clerk who will know this.
Yes, through your worship, at the last committee, or at the last council meeting, we reconfirmed that their appointments on wastewater treatment plant would continue
The
for this year.
wastewater treatment plant?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Now, if I can, hold on. Councillor Lemon, I cut you off a little bit earlier on something you're going to raise, and we've moved on.
No, it's been covered.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thomas?
Just a quick correction, Your Worship, on the Owen Sound and North Grey Union Public Library, we've chosen to have 1 member, not 2 as indicated.
Yep, that's correct. Good. Councillor McManaman.
We're never going to get to the voting here. Question for Councillor Thomas there. Have we heard back from Georgian Bluffs on that discussion? For the
Actually,
library?
Councillor Lemon was just asking me that very question, and I don't know. There'll be a library board meeting in a week and a half, at which point I will learn that informally. They did agree to it to me, so that's the best I can do at this point.
All I'd say is that if they don't agree to it, we may want to revisit that decision, that's all. But
I think that's
and it's
fair game.
Councillor Lemon and I are thinking just alike, as always.
Excuse me. No.
Okay.
Was there a decision on the Accessibility Advisory Committee?
Yeah, I guess, Councillor, we should do it by motion, shouldn't we? Councillor Lemon, I think, moved that the first person who picks the advisory committee would be the one that would go to the prevention of falls.
Unless the 2 people appointed agree otherwise.
Well, you can switch that after, but okay. All in favor of that? Good, carried. Good, thank you. So, envelope, please. He's peeking. Yeah, we need to have a lottery to decide who picks first.
You get 6, I'm going to really suspicious.
Rules change then.
4?
I don't want one.
You get 1.
What'd you get? But you know, to be right. To be right, right?
What'll I do?
Okay, council, who got number 1?
I did.
Councillor Kepke. Who got number 2? Councillor McManaman. Who got number 3? Councillor O'Leary. Who got number 4?
4, 5, 6.
So Councillor Lemon. 5 is Councillor Dodd. 6 is Councillor Thomas. 7 is Councillor Gregg. So what did you get? Okay.
Great.
So, you ready? If you want to give me a ready after you're ready to go to the next one, then I won't rush it. Okay. So first pick Councillor Kepke.
Financial Advisory
You
Committee.
want to push the button?
Financial Advisory Committee.
Thank you. Councillor McManaman. Oh, sorry. Am I going too fast? You're okay. Councillor McManaman.
Parks and Recreation. Parks and Recreation.
Thank you. Ready?
Parks and Rec?
Councillor O'Leary.
Police Board.
Police Board. Ready? Councillor Lemon.
Operations.
Okay. Councillor Dodd.
Economic Development.
Councillor Thomas.
Operations.
Number 7, you ready? Councillor Gregg.
Go operations.
Okay. Councillor Wright.
Economic Development and Planning.
And back to Councillor Gregg. Yeah.
Sorry, I can't find planning. Oh, there it is.
I'll go Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec. Okay, number 6, Councillor Thomas.
Economic Development.
Good. Number 5, Councillor Dodd.
I'll take Tom Thompson Art Gallery.
Okay, number 4, Councillor Lemon.
I'm going to take housing.
Okay, number 3, Councillor O'Leary.
Is financial advisory gone?
No.
Okay, financial advisory.
Okay. Ready? And Councillor McManaman.
Community Planning.
Okay, and Councillor Kepke.
Conservation Authority. Conservation Authority.
Okay, and Councillor Kepke again.
Bylaw Committee.
Okay, and Councillor McManaman.
Finance.
Okay, Councillor O'Leary.
Financial advice.
Yes, it's helpful.
Fire services.
Okay, Fire Services. Councillor Lemon.
Accessibility.
Councillor Dodd.
Parks and Rec.
Okay, Councillor Thomas.
Cultural Advisory.
Good. Councillor Gregg.
I'm just catching up here. Is there still one in planning and heritage?
Yes.
I'll go there.
Planning and Heritage? Now it's full. Councillor Wright?
I'll take bylaw
Bylaw.
and fire services.
Fire Services. Okay, Councillor Gregg?
I've got a bylaw.
Bylaw. Councillor Thomas?
Library?
Councillor Dodd?
I'll do bylaw.
Okay, so it's gone. Councillor Lemon?
I'm going to take BIA.
Councillor O'Leary?
Still a DIA there?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll take that.
There isn't now. Councillor McManaman?
Look forward to working with Councillor Lemon on nonprofit housing.
And Councillor Kepke?
It's complex.
Are there any spots on cultural left?
Yes.
I'll have that.
Cultural?
Yes.
And you get to pick again.
Oh. That's tough. Owen Sound Community Fund. Do I need my speaker on?
So Councillor McManaman?
I'll take, I pass.
You're going to use your buy? Okay. Councillor O'Leary?
We need to do a recap.
So if you look there, there's...
Through your worship, I don't know if it helps, but on the screen in front of you, anything that's in red has been taken. So the remaining vacancies are Accessibility Advisory Committee, Festival of Northern Lights, and Fire Services.
I'll take, am I up?
Yep.
Accessibility.
Accessibility? Okay, and...
One caution on this, we're going to have to make sure we have enough disabled people on that committee as required by the Act. Over 50% has to be disabled. We'll have to do a check on it.
We've got two spots and we've got them filled.
Okay, hopefully we're all right.
But you get to pick next while you're talking.
Oh. I guess it's choosing between Festival of Northern Lights and Fire Service.
Yep.
I
Or you can take a pass. You've got a pass there too, don't
I
forget.
think I'll take my pass.
Councillor Dodd, you don't have a pass.
I'll go Fire Services.
Okay. Councillor Thomas has a pass if he wishes to...
I wish to use it.
He wishes to spend it. Councillor Gregg also has a pass if he wishes to spend it, or he can go on to Festival of Northern Lights. Going to use a pass. Councillor Wright?
I'll use a pass.
You don't have a pass. Nice try, though. It almost worked. Yeah, unless anyone else wants Festival...
No, I am.
No, but after you, am I next?
No, it comes back to Councillor Gregg.
There's only one committee left, and that's, then we're done.
Unless you want to trade Festival of Northern Lights with Councillor Wright for nothing.
Yes, I'll take Festival of Northern Lights. Yep.
That was stupid of me. I should have negotiated a fee and collected the commission in between. Good, that's great. Do we need a motion to bring forward a bylaw? It's probably written down, is there?
Can we leave that on there? Because I don't have the...
Sure. It's just, we just want to move the business ahead if we can. sorry? Go ahead.
If we could get a motion to bring forward a bylaw to appoint council members to boards and committees.
Also move that we bring forward a bylaw to appoint council members, and is it just council members or members of the public too? Okay, council members to boards and committees.
So that's the recommendation in the report. And Councillor McManaman, you had your hand up.
Just wondering if we could get, if staff could provide us with an update tomorrow. If councillors wish to
horse trade,
take a look at the committees and see if some dates don't work for them, they'll know what other councillors have other committees.
Or you don't remember what committee you said yes to.
Okay, so Councillor Kepke has moved the recommendation. Sorry, go ahead.
Perhaps we should say we have to the end of the week, if that works for everyone, to make any, let us know of any changes.
By
Trades.
Friday, and then you can.
Yes.
Okay. So Friday at 5, and it closes at 4:30. But if anyone, anyway, all in favor of that motion, guys? Carried. Thank you. Down to 12A4, which is Director of Community Service, Site Plan Approval for Alpha Street. Ms. Coulter, want to present
Thank
that?
you, Worship. This is really a housekeeping type of report. Last committee meeting, you approved a site plan approval for Alpha Street redevelopment at 850 Alpha Street West. We've received correspondence that Lutheran Social Services is not purchasing the property at this time. So the purpose is really to ensure that the approval rests with the owner, Turbot Marine Limited, and that the execution of the site plan agreement is done with that same individual. So the conditions of site plan approval remain the same. So we just ask that you reconfirm those conditions and authorize a bylaw to allow the mayor and clerk to execute an agreement with Turbot Marine Limited.
Councillor Dodd, you about to move that?
Yeah, I'll move this motion. We accept it.
Okay, and comments? All in favor? Great, carried. Thank you. Number 12.6A, report from Acting Fire Chief. Revised Emergency Response Plan Emergency Program. Ms. Corsi, are you going to present, or Mr. Backing? Oh, sorry, I crossed that off thinking that we had. So if we can go back to 12A5 on the on our list, and that's with regard to Police Services Street Hockey Tournament in May. And I think that's Mr. Backing that's presenting that.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a request from the Police Department to have a road hockey tournament as part of their celebration of the Police Week festivities that they're planning for the coming this coming summer. They're proposing to shut down 2nd Avenue from 8th to 9th on a Sunday morning to have a road hockey tournament. It's closing down roads in the downtown core is not an uncommon experience for us, and we see no difficulty with it. All of the appropriate checks and balances will be in place to ensure that it's a safe event for all.
So, Councillor Lemon?
I would move the recommendation, but I think some of us remember growing up in Owen Sound, when if we saw the police coming and we're playing road hockey, we'd vamoose. Not me, of course, but other people.
I thought, were you the goalie with all the heavy equipment on? Yeah. Okay. Councillor Lemon has moved that. All in favor? Carried.
Use tennis balls or something.
Carried. Thank you. Now I can move on to 12A6, which is the report from the Acting Fire Chief, Ms. Corsi.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through the members of council, the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act requires that we adopt an emergency management program, which we have done, and also requires that we have an emergency plan done by bylaw, and that we review the emergency plan yearly, and we have done that review. We did do an emergency exercise in December, and one of the significant changes here is that the structure has been changed to be consistent with the Provincial Incident Management System, or IMS, and that has been adopted by the city, so we're going to generally be in compliance with many of our surrounding neighbors on how the plans are carried out.
Good, thank you. Someone want to move that? Councillor McManaman?
I'll move the recommendation. Question for Ms. Corsi. Is it the intention to have a emergency planning exercise with council as well in 2015?
Yes, there will be. Because we've had relatively recent changes in staff, we're still working through the logistics of that, but that's one of the ongoing orientation items that we will do with you.
Good, thank you. So we're down to 12B, I believe, consent agenda items. Do you want to present the consent agendas? Oh, we didn't vote on that one. No, it's getting to be that time of night. All in favor of that motion? Great, carried. Thank you. So now consent agenda items.
Through you, Your Worship, the consent agenda includes 3 planning reports and 4 planning notices for which the city has no comment, minutes for receipt from the Owen Sound Municipal Nonprofit Housing Corporation, the Owen Sound Housing Company, and the Owen Sound and North Gradian Public Library Board, as well as correspondence that has been received that is being presented for the information of council.
Comments? Anything? Councillor McManaman?
Thank you, Worship. To Councillor Thomas, I was reading the library minutes and I got thinking the elevator upgrade. Is that, do you have any information on, or maybe I should ask Ms. Corsi, I don't know, just haven't recalled hearing anything about it.
I'm surprised you haven't been over for a ride yet, Councillor McManaman.
I use the stairs.
Yes, the elevator upgrade was completed, fairly close to schedule is my understanding, and well, sometime I'll tell you the story because it's quite a tale. But yes, it's upgraded, it's working, and everything's perfect.
So, Councillor O'Leary, you moving the consent agenda and the recommendation at the bottom there? Good. All in favor? Carried. Great. Thank you. Minutes of boards and committees for approvals. We're down to 12C1. I noticed the 12C1 and 2 are minutes of the development charge meetings, which were much the same as the presentation. So if we can just have someone move approval. Councillor Thomas moved both 12C1 and 12C2. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. 12C3 is minutes from Operation Advisory Committee. Who's chairing that? Do you want to present?
Sure. Thank you, Worship. Number of items, quite a long meeting for this one. A couple of, I guess, the key items I'll pull out is you'll remember the discussion about putting railings in at the Bayshore and at the rec center, or the past councillors will. Had quite a discussion, a report from staff. It's, I guess I could say it's not really possible to put railings in at the Bayshore. The aisles are not wide enough to meet the building code for putting a railing in. Okay. You do see them in some arenas, and my understanding is they've been put in retrofit and then they don't meet the building code. So anyway, our chief building official looked at it, our staff looked at it, and the thought that most people have of just putting a railing right down the middle isn't allowed under the building code. So I don't know, there's not too much more to say other than that. There was some discussion about putting a small railing at every seat, if you follow me, that doesn't obstruct the walkway, but I believe the cost for that was, $500,000. It really cost prohibitive. So that was that item. The transit terminal update, Mr. Becking did touch on that today, but there's a more in-depth report. And also the third report, and I'd ask to Mr. Becking if all 3 of those reports, the railings one, the transit terminal, and the winter level of service could be sent to council, the specific reports, just because there's quite a bit of detail in there, and I think it's important detail for council to be aware of. The transit terminal one is more just an update, but I think it's good that everybody will be updated with the exact information. The winter level of service, that's a good one as well. 2 years ago, past councillors will remember we implemented a level of service. We had a number of issues with that. We had a harsh winter. Basically, I think it's fair to say, maybe I should let Mr. Becking speak to this, but we've sort of stepped back from that a bit, reevaluated. We're looking at it. But again, this report delves into that in detail. So maybe if those could be sent out, those 3 specific reports. There is one modification to the transit route. The the bus is not going to go into the rec center, well, if it's approved by council, is not going to go into the rec center. It's going to go at 10th Street, the light at 10th Street. People will have to cross there. The main reason is to save time on that route. That's the route that's traditionally late getting back to the terminal, and it was felt you could pick up, depending on how the lights work, you could pick up some time there if you don't actually drive into the rec center. Excuse me. I believe those are all the major issues in those, in those minutes.
Okay, thank you. You're moving.
And I move the minutes adoption.
Yeah, Councillor Gregg.
I just have a couple questions on those minutes. The first one is even the possibility of handrails at the new rec center. Just wonder why in the upper tiers of a place like the Rogers Center with such a steep pitch can have handrails, however we can't put them in according to the building code.
Yeah, Mr. Beck, there is some, well, Mr. Beck can go ahead, sorry.
There must be a minimum clear spaces defined by the Building Code Act. And if you are to put in railings, then there has to be an additional width so that you can, it's all driven by the need for egress from the building. So that's what's driving the situation in this particular instance. The aisles are simply just too narrow to accept any railings.
And just to your point, I showed our chief building officials several pictures from arenas in southern Ontario that have railings down the middle of them, and without him going out and measuring it, he didn't believe any of them met the building code. They were retrofits after the fact and didn't meet the building code. So as difficult as that, believe me, we had a good discussion. That's a difficult one, but I'm not sure what else there's to do.
You had another point? Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Boddy, and thank you, Mr. Becking. I have another question, and it's on the proposed bus change. When they put a bus stop on the south side of 10th Street, I presume the bus is still making a left-hand turn on 8th Avenue, which only strikes me when there is extremely heavy traffic. I would presume that's a hard left to get over in such a short amount of space to then again make that left-hand turn. Is an alternative to have the bus go directly up 10th Street and make the left-hand turn onto 8th Avenue and place the bus stop off of 8th Avenue, or have the bus pull into the rec center off of 8th Avenue and then come back out, and you would achieve the same amount of savings in time when that's the goal.
No, the intent of the consultant was to eliminate going into the rec center entirely. That's the thing that's causing the delays on the run. And it's throwing off the timing for all of the other buses. I've looked at it, the consultants looked at it, we both agree that it is doable for the bus to get over into the left lane in order to make the left-hand turn onto 8th. So I don't think that's a concern.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Wright.
Thank you very much. Did I, through you, Mayor, to Councillor McManaman, did I hear you say that we would all be getting those 3 reports? Okay. Because my question on the railing is, I suspect when I read the report that you looked at putting those railings over the seats down every aisle. That you wouldn't have to do that, you see. If you put them down every alternative aisle, that still gives people that they have they can go to the end. It's very dangerous. There have been people fall often down those stairs, and I do know that you know, you say to people, book your seats up high, but it's, you know, it doesn't help. That there still are people that fall down those stairs. But I'll wait till I read the report. When can we expect those reports? Thank you.
So, Councillor McManaman, you moved that report already. And all in favor of approving the report? Great, thank you. We're down to 12C4 is the minutes of wastewater treatment plant upgrade. Someone?
Sure. Thank you, Worship. The two main items in here on the wastewater treatment plant, we, past council thought that perhaps we could remove some of the odor control from the facility and had saved $180,000 on that initiative. After much work and investigation, it was determined that we would require odor control. So what, say 6 months ago we thought was $180,000 saving is now put back into the budget. It's still within the contingency. It's not an increase in the overall budget, but that was one of the main things. The other discussion we had was about dechlorination. Even though the wastewater treatment plant will be up and running in the end of 2016, beginning of 2017, up until that time, as of January 1st, we have to dechlorinate the water, the effluent, thank you, Mr. And so we had to put in a $175,000 dechlorination to meet federal guidelines, only to have to take it out again at the beginning of 2017. Anyway, the federal guidelines are what they are, and they said, nope, you have to dechlorinate all effluent going into the bay, so that's what we're doing. And it's once it's removed, and we can resell some of it or reuse some of the equipment, that's a total cost of $145,000. I guess the main point on these minutes is the treatment plant is still on time, still on budget. These are all the two things I just discussed were variances within the contingency budget, so hasn't increased the overall price.
And it was a decision by upper tier government, provincial or federal, maybe Mr. Becking can answer this, that determined that we had to put in the odor control, not that it's going to hurt development in the area, as well as a dechlorination?
That is correct. With respect to the dechlorination, that was a federal requirement by the Federal Department of Environment. With respect to the odor control, that was a requirement of the Provincial Ministry of the Environment. As I understand it, when the contract was being awarded, there was a suggestion that perhaps we could avoid the odor control, and the ministry agreed to allow us to investigate it through modeling, computer modeling. The modeling was done and came back that no matter what was used as the receptor, the odor control would still be required. So, you know, it was an option that was explored. It thought it had promised to save money. Unfortunately, it didn't pan out.
And we're still on budget and still on time.
Yes, all of these changes, as the councillor has indicated, is within the contingency, and the contingency is still in a healthy condition at this point.
Thank you. Someone want to move that report? Councillor Kepke.
Also move the report.
And all in favor?
Minutes.
Carried. Thank you. Minutes of in-camera meeting for approval, Councillor Kepke. Yeah.
I'll move the item 12D1 and 2, minutes of in-camera council orientation on December 12th, and also the minutes of the in-camera meeting of December 15th.
Councillor McManaman.
I would just note that those were the minutes that I was declaring the pecuniary interest on. The council orientation minutes of December 12th, I won't be voting on those minutes.
Okay, great. All in favor of, are we doing approving these minutes? Carried. Thank you. We're down to other business. Deputy Mayor Wright was first.
Thank you. I will be giving, sorry about that, a very quick report on what happened at the county. That I only picked out some of the highlights. Number one highlight, our CAO at the county is no longer with us. We had accepted his resignation as of last Friday. So we are meeting tomorrow at our corporate services. We will be discussing where we are going to go from here on in. Also at corporate services, we had a budget report come to county, and because the Blue Mountain had requested we look at the 100% return, that is also coming back. The first budget, first draft showed a decrease of minus 1.56%. And that is going back to corporate services. Under health, the explanation for the flu that is going around, the virus, the strain A, is simply that the vaccine does not cover both the strain A's and that probably 30% of the people that did get the vaccine will not get the flu, but the 70% that got it do have a good chance of getting the flu. The B strain will come out later, towards the end of January, first part of February. The flu shot will cover that, so you should, if you haven't had your flu shot, you should be getting one. Wild chervil is still a problem, and I know we do have it in the city. There is a product out now called Truist, and so Parks and Rec should be looking at that product. It's capital Truist, and the county is using it. We've been told to use it in certain, we want to be able to use it in other areas, but they're using it in certain spots right now, so the city could perhaps look at that. Social services, where Mayor Boddy sits on that, they're applying for a government or a provincial grant under community transportation, a pilot grant program for the planning and implementation of local community transportation projects. This could be an opportunity for our bus depot. If they hire a staff person and need a spot to coordinate busing, that could be a potential use for our bus station, so we shouldn't let that drop. And the economic development project is coming to an end. We have another final coming up in February, where there will be a get-together of the group again, and I'm talking about the 50 people from around the community that will get the rollout of it, and then it's prepared to go to county. So I have brought copies of the report. I did get an email today that the final page is in, and I will try and print that off and bring it to council, so you'll have it tomorrow. I gave it to Mr. Steve and to city manager and the mayor, and it is excellent, so I hope we can do something with that. That's my report.
Good. Need a motion? We don't really need a motion, do we?
Motion to receive.
Okay, motion to receive. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Your next one was police.
Yes, and I have another issue, and that is with police services. Under the Municipal Act, it's up to the city to pay compensation to those members of the Police Services Board, and we have changed the manner in which council is paid now. We are paid. We don't get per diems anymore, and I think there is a problem at police services in that sometimes you get members of police services who are not regular attendees at the meetings, but there is a yearly stipend that is paid to them, and I feel that there should be a recommendation that there be a per diem paid to the which we are mandatory. We have to pay a per diem to the provincial appointments. And so I think that I would like to ask for a report. If I could just get a small report brought back to council to see where we go with this. And it will be raised on Wednesday morning. We have a police meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning. And this will be raised, and I would just like to be able to say that we're going to get a report from city, because we're the ones that are responsible to do the paying. And as well then that the council representative would not be paid to attend police services board, as that would be included in the annual stipend that the councillors are now getting.
So
I'll make that motion that we
motion to get a report. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Ms. Coulter, you're next in the...
Thank you, Your Worship. My item is the minutes of Rec and Parks from last Thursday, January 8th, and the chair of that committee is Councillor McManaman.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. This meeting was just held last Thursday, as Ms. Coulter said. You'll note in the minutes the reason the committee asked it to be brought forward for tonight, rather quickly. The main issue is around minor lacrosse came forward with a request to reduce their floor rental fees. The committee debated that over 2 different meetings. Ultimately, they decided to uphold the current subsidy policy, which is the 30% subsidy for minor sports. But on top of that, there were a number of other initiatives. One, they're the committee recommended, asking council to endorse, recommended the floor rates be frozen in 2015, this current year, that there was a number of initiatives brought forward by Ms. Coulter in her report that talked about other ways we could help them without directly reducing the floor rate. Probably the biggest one, and the reason why it was brought forward for this evening, was also the recommendation, and I'll just read it, that the Recreation and Parks Advisory Committee recommends City Council invite neighboring municipalities to initiate discussions regarding a recreation agreement, and that was carried unanimously. I think it was felt that a lot of the issues around minor sports, especially with the new council here, a new council in Georgian Bluffs, that it was imperative to get started immediately. And when I say immediately, I do mean having a discussion, a meeting of some sort in January, keeping in mind minor sports registration takes place in February. So if any movement is to be made there, not to preempt what may or may not happen at any meeting that the mayor would convene or ask other municipalities to come into, or to come to meet with us. I think there's both a short-term and a long-term discussion here. In our opinion, this is what we discussed at the meeting. In the short term, I believe there's some administrative things that can be done around the user fee issue that may make it easier for the children from neighboring municipalities to register in Owen Sound. I believe it's a win-win, and I think the council and the other municipalities will I think they'll consider it a win as well. Longer term, throughout the rest of the year, we have to have a discussion about an agreement, if there's a willingness there to see where that goes. But that's, as you know, Mayor Boddy, being on the last committee, that's a long, that's not a quick discussion. That'll take some time. The main point of this is that to have a meeting, call a meeting, invite them in January, so that if there is going to be some decision made to help alleviate the situation in whatever way, it can be done ASAP in time for February registration, in time to help those summer minor sports groups. Of course, it'll help the winter ones as well, but this is the immediate concern now. So anyway, I would move adoption of these minutes, and if that is council's wish, then I think it would authorize you as mayor to move forward with some discussions.
And this is with rec in particular.
Recreation, specific to recreation.
Okay. Discussion, Councillor Lyman.
I would assume that it would be council to council.
That's open for discussion. I would, my suggestion would be the first meeting would probably be helpful if all council members were there, especially on the short-term solution that I was discussing. I think that's going to work, but longer term, council will have to decide how we want to approach it. But I think the first meeting, plus the fact we've never met face-to-face as a council, so it might be a good opportunity to at least do that. But I would leave that to the mayor.
I'm perhaps a little bit confused as Councillor Lemon. I wonder if we should do it as two different things, and one being an invitation to have a joint meeting council to council and have a wide open discussion about whatever comes up at that meeting, and you've passed something specifically with regard to recreation, if that would make sense, to have send a letter to see if they want to discuss it and figure out from there who does.
The main point of it is the committee was recommending council that we need, if council agrees, we need to move, and we need to move now on it. I think that was the main point. How we move now, I don't, that's up to council.
So first of all, we have Councillor McManaman's motion to accept the minutes, approve the minutes from Parks and Rec the other day that is specific to recreation discussions.
Okay, my question is it going to be recreation that does the negotiation, or is it going to be?
We don't know. Let's just see if they're interested in discussing it.
Okay.
Correct? Is that the motion? All in favor? Carried. Now, do you want to move that we send a letter in general to Georgian Bluffs?
Yes, I would so move that we send a letter to Georgian Bluffs requesting a joint meeting to to discuss matters of mutual interest.
Great.
I think that's about as broad as you can make it.
Ms. Corsi?
Your worship and members of council, I am concerned that on the matter of how we administer fees, that we need to move quickly. And I wonder if either the mayor and the appropriate staff could ask to meet with the other mayors and appropriate staff. It's just, as all of you know, it is very challenging to get entire councils together quickly.
Councilor McManaman, you okay with that?
Yeah. The discussion we're having, the short-term one, is more of an administration type discussion, and hopefully there's some willingness on both parts to move that forward, so whatever way it works.
I know that, I know there's a willingness on the part of the mayor and perhaps to solve this problem, and I think it's something that we don't need two councils together to solve. I think it's something that can be solved, whether it's a staff call or whether it's a committee call or whether it's a mayor-to-mayor call, but I think that's to solve that. I do think that getting us all together is something that's on Georgian Bluff's mind as well. So I would hope that we would move ahead on the one issue right away, and if I don't know whether you can just, there is a motion on the floor, but whether you can just take that as direction and get it done. I don't think you can. Let's deal with the first motion first.
Well, I think we already voted in the receipt of the, we already voted on the receipt of the approval of the minutes from Parks and Rec, so yeah, just do it. Now, Councillor Lemon, I believe, has a motion that he's made to send the letter to discuss council on council matters of mutual interest.
Yes, and I don't know how long it will take to set up such a meeting, but I think that it's going to send a very clear message, as this is really our first meeting of the new year, that we'd like to sit down and talk with them, and I'm sure they would like to talk with us about some things. There are some areas where mutual cooperation could save both of us a lot of cost.
And all in favor of that motion? Carried. Good. Thank you.
I'll move the committee rise.
No, hold on. We're not done yet. Thank you. Mr. Backing.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to bring council up to date, it started snowing late in the evening on the 3rd, and it stopped late in the evening last night. And with a couple of relatively minor pauses in between, we've had 7 days of continuous snow, and not a little bit. My guesstimate is somewhere between 1 meter and 1.2 meters as an absolute minimum in terms of the amount of snow. I was looking at some statistics, and we've got something in the order of about 50% or 60% of the amount that we would normally get in January. So, and we're only 1 week in. So I don't know that it necessarily bodes well for the rest of the month. Staff have been working 24/7 since it started. They haven't had a break. We ran a little close to the wire in terms of the hours of work legislation, but managed to skate by that reasonably easily. Quick guesstimate of what it's cost us, we've spent over $100,000 in 7 days. So it was not an inexpensive exercise. We certainly maintained, we met or exceeded, and I would say exceeded the minimum maintenance standards on all of the arterials and collector roadways. I don't think there was a time when I think we fell below that. The local roadways, I think, suffered a little bit, but that's just the nature of the beast as you focus your attention on the more important roadways, and then get to the locals as and when you can. Certainly the sidewalks suffered. We only have 3 units, and they were working for the most part throughout the period, although we had to pull people off some of those pieces of equipment in order to get them onto the larger trucks and graders and loaders and so forth to keep ahead of the snow. We ran into a difficulty with snow storage, particularly in the downtown core, towards the end of the week. And in fact, we went in and partially removed snow from the downtown core on Thursday night, just by running the blower up to the curb line. We didn't go onto the sidewalk or the boulevard, but that will be happening on Wednesday of this week. So we'll get things cleaned back up. The outlook right now is basically clear weather for the next 4 or 5 days. So the bulk of our operations will be devoted to cleanup activities. I would hazard to suggest that we'll be easily over $150,000 before we're done from this little escapade.
So in summary, every blade that's operating has been operating, and just about every sidewalk plow has been operating, and you're going to get to downtown this Wednesday night, unless you get a big storm, to clean up all the remaining snow.
Actually, we will be working throughout the week. We hope to have a parking lot behind City Hall by tomorrow morning.
Great.
And a few other locations. But in any event, staff did a commendable job in my view, performed very, very well, and I was very pleased with what I saw.
Great. It's good to hear. Thank you. I think we're done other business now.
I'll move that the committee rise and report.
And all in favor? Carried. Formal session resolution, we're down to number 15, adopting proceedings in committee of the whole.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor O'Leary, that the action taken in committee of the whole in considering public meetings, deputations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports, matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business be confirmed by this council.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. And number 16, notices of motion. Any? Hold on. None. 17, new business by resolution. Any? Oh, I wish I could think of a couple.
Do that one more time.
It's an aerobic workout. Number 18, bylaws.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor O'Leary, the bylaw numbers 2015-001, 002, 003, 004, 005, 006, 007, and 008 be passed and enacted.
And all in favor? Carried. Our business is complete. We're adjourning.